My name is Margaret Reyes. I'm 57 and I traveled 12 hours to my son's wedding in California. When I arrived, everything was wrong. Empty hall, wilted flowers, and his cold words, "The wedding's over." Mom, what I discovered next would reveal secrets that destroyed us both. Before I continue, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It sits at the edge of nowhere, a white building with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickers when the wind gets mean. The kind of place truckers stop at for black coffee and eggs at 3 in the morning. The kind of place that smells like burnt grease and yesterday's dreams. I've been cooking here for 30 years. 30 years of the same cracked linoleum under my feet. 30 years of the same bell chiming above the door. 30 years of pouring coffee into chipped mugs for strangers who never ask my name. The desert stretches in every direction. Golden, silent, unforgiving. In the summer, the heat crawls through the walls and sits heavy in your lungs. In the winter, the wind screams across the plains like a ghost you can't outrun. I know this landscape better than I know my own face. It's a hard place. A place that either breaks you or makes you tougher than you ever wanted to be. I learned to stop wanting things a long time ago. Most days blur together. I arrive before sunrise. Unlock the door, turn on the griddle. By 6 a.m., the regulars trickle in. Tommy, who drives the UPS route, Dolores, who works the night shift at the gas station, old Mr. Hernandez, who sits in the corner booth and reads the same newspaper for hours. They don't talk much, and neither do I. We've perfected the art of comfortable silence. But sometimes, when the lunch rush dies down and the afternoon light slants through the dusty windows, I catch myself staring out at that endless stretch of sand and sky. And I think about him. My son, Ethan. He got out. That's what people say when someone leaves this town and doesn't come back. He got out. Like we're all trapped here, waiting for someone to unlock the door. Maybe we are. Ethan was always different, smart, restless. Even as a boy, he'd sit at the counter doing homework while I worked, and I could see it in his eyes. That hunger for something bigger than this place could ever offer. He wanted cities with lights that never went out. He wanted buildings taller than the sky. He wanted a life I couldn't even imagine. When he got that scholarship to study in San Francisco, I cried for 3 days straight. Not because I was sad, because I knew he'd earned it, because I knew every sacrifice I'd made, every double shift, every missed meal, every sleepless night had been worth it, he used to tell me back then. Mom, one day I'll make you proud. I'll give you everything you ever dreamed of. And I'd smile and ruffle his hair and tell him I was already proud. I didn't tell him I'd stopped dreaming years ago. Now the restaurant is quiet again. The dinner crowd has left. I'm wiping down the counter for the 100th time today, my hands moving on autopilot. The radio plays some old country song about lost love and dusty roads. It's the kind of music that makes you feel like you're drowning in your own memories. I reach into my apron pocket and pull out the photo I always carry. Ethan at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a crayon drawing of the two of us. In the picture, we're both smiling under a sun. He colored bright yellow at the bottom, in his crooked child's handwriting, "Me and Mom, best friends forever." The photo is creased and faded now. The edges are soft from being handled too many times. I trace my thumb over his face and wonder when we stopped being best friends. When was the last time he called? 3 months ago. 4. I can't remember. Outside, the sun is setting, painting the desert in shades of burnt orange and deep purple. It's beautiful in a way that hurts, the kind of beauty that reminds you how small you are. I tuck the photo back into my pocket, turn off the lights, and lock the door behind me. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that. That's what I think anyway. I don't know yet that everything is about to change. I met Robert Reyes when I was 23 years old. He walked into the restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon with dirt under his fingernails and a smile that could light up the darkest room. He ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a grilled cheese and coffee, and left me a $5 tip on a $3 meal. "For the best smile in New Mexico," he said, winking. I thought he was ridiculous. Charming, but ridiculous. He came back the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, I'd agreed to let him take me to the drive-in theater. By the end of the month, I was in love. Robert worked construction. He had big hands and bigger dreams. He'd talk for hours about the house he'd build us someday. White walls, a porch with rocking chairs, a garden where I could grow tomatoes. He painted pictures with his words, and I believed every single one. We got married in a small chapel with 6 guests and a bouquet of wildflowers. I picked myself. I wore a cream-colored dress I'd sewn by hand. He wore his only suit. We were broke and happy and young enough to think that was all we needed. Ethan was born 2 years later. God, he was beautiful. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. He had Robert's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. When they placed him in my arms, I felt something shift inside me, a fierce, terrifying love that made the rest of the world fade to nothing. Robert cried when he held him. "We made this," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We made something perfect." Those were the good years, the years when Robert came home smelling like sawdust and sweat, when Ethan would run to the door shouting, "Daddy," when we'd eat dinner together at the rickety kitchen table, laughing at nothing and everything. But time has a way of peeling back the pretty layers. Robert started coming home later. The smell of sawdust was replaced by something sharper. Whiskey, cigarettes, cheap perfume. He swore came from the guys at work. The construction jobs dried up. The bills piled higher. His dreams of building us a house turned into excuses about bad timing and tough breaks. I worked double shifts at the restaurant. Ethan started doing his homework at the counter, waiting for me to finish so we could walk home together in the dark. One night, I came home and Robert was gone. Not just gone for the evening, gone. His clothes were missing from the closet. His toothbrush was gone. The truck we'd bought together, gone on the kitchen table. He'd left a note scrawled on the back of an overdue electric bill. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me." That was it. 14 years of marriage reduced to 2 sentences. Ethan was 12. He stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching me crumple that note in my fist. "Where's Dad?" he asked. His voice so small it broke me. "He had to go away for work, baby," I lied. "He'll be back soon." But weeks turned into months, and Robert never came back. Then the calls started. Debt collectors, banks, loan sharks I didn't even know existed. Robert had been borrowing money, tens of thousands of dollars from anyone who would lend it. He'd put our house up as collateral. He'd forged my signature on documents I'd never seen. I remember sitting at that kitchen table, surrounded by papers I couldn't understand, feeling the walls of our life collapsing inward. The house, the only thing we owned, was going to be taken. I could have fought it maybe, but lawyers cost money I didn't have. And even if I won, what then? Stay in a house full of ghosts. Watch Ethan grow up in the shadow of his father's betrayal. My Aunt Susan died that winter. She left me $10,000. Not a fortune, but enough to change everything. I could have saved the house, started over right there. Instead, I paid off every single one of Robert's debts. Every single one. I didn't tell Ethan the truth. How could I? How do you explain to a 12-year-old that his father didn't just leave? He destroyed everything and left us to drown in the wreckage. So I lied. I told him we were moving because I wanted a fresh start, because the city was too expensive, because I'd found a better job opportunity. He believed me because children want to believe their mothers. We moved to this small town, to the little house behind the restaurant, to a life so quiet it felt like holding your breath forever. Ethan never asked about his father again, and I never told him what I'd done with Aunt Susan's money. Some secrets, I thought, were mercies. I was wrong. Secrets don't stay buried. They grow roots. They spread through everything, choking out the truth until nothing can grow between you anymore. I didn't know that then, but I'd learn. The message came on a Thursday morning. I was refilling the sugar dispensers. Mindless work that my hands knew by heart, when my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I almost ignored it. Who calls me? The phone company reminding me about my bill. Spam calls about my car's extended warranty. But something made me pull it out. A text from Ethan. My heart did that stupid thing it always does when I see his name on my screen. A leap of hope followed by the crash of reality. Our conversations had become transactional over the years. Quick check-ins, brief updates, the kind of communication that keeps people technically connected while allowing them to remain emotionally distant. "Mom, I'm getting married. I want you here. It wouldn't be the same without you." I read it 3 times, then I sat down hard on the nearest stool because my legs forgot how to hold me up. "Margaret, you okay?" Dolores was standing at the counter, concern creasing her weathered face. I couldn't speak. I just showed her the phone. She read it and her eyes went soft. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Was it? I couldn't tell if the pressure in my chest was joy or terror or some combination of both. My son was getting married. My son, who called maybe 4 times a year, who spent last Christmas in Cabo with friends instead of coming home, who had systematically created an entire life in California that had no room for his mother, wanted me at his wedding. It wouldn't be the same without you. Those words played on repeat in my mind all day, through the lunch rush, through the afternoon lull, through the dinner crowd. I burned a burger, forgot an order, gave someone decaf instead of regular. Tommy noticed, "You're distracted today. My son's getting married. The one in San Francisco." "Yeah, that's great, Margaret. When?" "I don't know. I need to ask." But I didn't ask. Not yet. I just kept rereading that message, scared that if I responded too eagerly, he might change his mind. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone clutched against my chest like a lifeline. The house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, at 2 a.m., I typed back, "When? I'll be there." His response came 6 hours later, 3 weeks from Saturday, San Francisco. "I'll send you the address." "Love you, Mom." "Love you, Mom." How long had it been since he'd said that? I cried into my pillow like a fool. The next morning, I marched into my manager's office. "I need time off." He looked up. Startled, in 30 years, I'd taken maybe 5 sick days, total. How long? "A week. My son's getting married." His face broke into a rare smile. "Margaret, take 2 weeks. Hell, take 3. You've earned it." I spent the following days in a strange fever of preparation. I bought a bus ticket. Couldn't afford to fly, but that was fine. 12 hours on a Greyhound wasn't so bad. I'd spent my whole life making do. I went through my closet looking for something appropriate to wear. Everything was old, faded, practical, work clothes, clothes that smelled like fryer grease. No matter how many times I washed them, Dolores took me to the thrift store in the next town over. We found a navy dress with small white flowers. Still had the tags on it, $12. I paired it with the only nice shoes I owned, black flats I'd bought for Aunt Susan's funeral. "You look beautiful," Dolores said, and she meant it. I didn't feel beautiful. I felt like a woman playing dress-up, pretending she belonged in her son's fancy California life. But I bought the dress anyway. The day before I left, I closed up the restaurant early and walked home through the desert. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and pink. I thought about Ethan as a little boy, chasing lizards through the sand, laughing as the wind whipped his hair into his eyes. Where did that boy go? When did he become this stranger who only called on holidays? When did I become someone he had to invite to his own life? I pushed the thoughts away. This was supposed to be happy. He wanted me there. He said it wouldn't be the same without me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the wedding, Ethan in a tuxedo, grinning, a beautiful bride in white, guests congratulating me, telling me I must be so proud, dancing, laughter, a mother-son dance where he'd hold me close and whisper, "Thank you for everything, Mom." I packed and repacked my small suitcase, added a gift, a silver picture frame I'd found at the thrift store with an old photo of Ethan as a baby, proof that once we'd been everything to each other. The bus left at dawn. I barely slept. When the alarm went off at 4 a.m., I was already awake, dressed, sitting on the edge of my bed with my suitcase at my feet. This is it, I thought. This is the moment everything changes. I had no idea how right I was. The bus smelled like stale coffee and other people's lives. I found a window seat near the back and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Watching the darkness give way to the pale blue of early morning, the engine rumbled beneath me like a heartbeat. We pulled out of the station at 5:47 a.m. I know because I checked my watch 17 times in the first hour, calculating and recalculating how long until I'd see him. The desert slipped past, mile after mile of emptiness broken only by the occasional gas station or lone cactus standing sentinel. This landscape had been my whole world for so long. Now I was leaving it behind, hurtling toward something unknown, toward my son. The woman next to me was probably in her 40s, dressed in a business suit that had seen better days. She spent the first 3 hours on her phone, typing furiously, occasionally sighing in frustration. When the signal died somewhere past Albuquerque, She finally looked up and noticed me. "Where you headed?" "San Francisco, my son's getting married." Her face softened. "That's wonderful, first wedding." "First everything," I admitted. "He's my only child." "I bet you're excited, terrified," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. She laughed, not unkindly. "I have 3 kids. The oldest just graduated college. Hasn't called in 6 weeks. They grow up and away, don't they?" "They do." We sat in silence after that, but it felt less lonely somehow. Across the aisle, a young couple slept tangled together, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. They couldn't have been more than 20. So young they still believed love was simple. I remembered being that young, being that certain behind them. An elderly man read a paperback western, his lips moving slightly as he followed the words. A mother 3 rows up wrestled with 2 small children who seemed determined to climb over every surface. A teenage boy with headphones stared out the window, lost in whatever world his music created. All of us going somewhere, all of us leaving something behind. The landscape began to change. The desert gave way to scrubland, then foothills. By midday, we were winding through mountains, the bus groaning as it climbed. I bought a sad sandwich at a rest stop, turkey and cheese on white bread that tasted like cardboard, and ate it slowly, making it last. I thought about the last time I'd seen Ethan. Christmas, 3 years ago. He'd come home for exactly 4 days, spent most of them on his phone, taking work calls, responding to emails. We'd exchanged gifts, practical things, awkward things, a sweater I'd picked out that was the wrong size, a gift card from him to a restaurant I'd never go to. We'd sat across from each other at that rickety kitchen table, chewing pot roast in silence, and I'd realized we'd forgotten how to talk to each other. When had that happened? How was your day? Become too difficult to question. I watched him leave on the morning of the 28th, his rental car disappearing down the dusty road, and I'd felt something break inside me, something I didn't know how to name, but now he wanted me at his wedding. That had to mean something, didn't it? Maybe this was our chance to rebuild, to remember how to be mother and son instead of strangers who shared DNA. The afternoon stretched long and golden. We crossed into California, and I felt my pulse quicken. The terrain shifted again. Rolling hills, vineyards, orchards, so much green after years of brown and gold. As the sun began its descent, we pulled into Oakland for a transfer. I had 30 minutes to catch the next bus to San Francisco. I bought a bad cup of coffee and called the motel where I'd booked a room for the night. "Yes, ma'am, we have your reservation. See you this evening." This evening, tonight, I'd be in the same city as my son. Tomorrow was the wedding. The final leg of the journey took us into San Francisco as darkness fell. The city appeared like something from a dream. Lights sparkling across hills, bridges stretching into the night, buildings climbing into the sky. How did people live here? How did they breathe in this place where everything was so much, so loud, so alive? How did my son become someone who belonged here? The bus station was chaos. People rushing past with luggage, taxi drivers shouting, the smell of exhaust and food trucks, and too many bodies in one place. I stood on the curb with my small suitcase. Momentarily frozen, a taxi driver approached. "You need a ride, lady." I showed him the address of the motel. He nodded and loaded my bag as we drove through the streets, so different from home, so impossibly crowded and bright. I watched the city pass outside my window and felt like an alien visiting another planet. This was Ethan's world now, and tomorrow I'd finally be part of it. The motel was cheap but clean. I unpacked my dress, hung it carefully in the closet, set my alarm for 7 a.m. The ceremony was at 2. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the city outside my window. Sirens, voices, the constant hum of traffic. Sleep came slowly. When it did, I dreamed of Ethan as a little boy, holding my hand, looking up at me like I was the whole world. Something was wrong. I knew it the moment the taxi pulled up to the address Ethan had sent me. The building, a renovated warehouse with tall windows and exposed brick, sat too still, too quiet. "This it?" the driver asked, glancing at his GPS. "Yes, thank you." I paid him with bills I'd counted and recounted a dozen times, added a tip that felt generous but not extravagant, and stepped out onto the sidewalk with my purse and the small gift bag containing the silver frame. The venue had double doors painted a cheerful yellow. Through the windows, I could see lights on inside, but no movement, no gathering guests, no music. Maybe I was early. I checked my phone. 1:47 p.m. The invitation said 2 o'clock. I pulled open the door. The silence hit me first, then the scene. The main room was large and beautiful in that industrial chic way that California people love. High ceilings with exposed beams, strings of Edison bulbs, a bar along one wall. Someone had tried to make it festive. Tried. White chairs sat in crooked rows. Some tipped over. Bouquets of hydrangeas and roses wilted in their vases. Petals scattered across the floor. Balloons, once probably buoyant and cheerful, now sagged against the walls like deflated dreams. On the tables, half-eaten plates of food, abandoned champagne glasses, crumpled napkins. It looked like a party that had started and stopped suddenly, like everyone had vanished mid-celebration. "Hello," my voice echoed in the empty space. That's when I saw him. Ethan stood at the far end of the room near a tall window, his back to me. He wore a tuxedo, black jacket, white shirt, black bow tie loosened at his throat. His shoulders were hunched forward, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Ethan!" He turned slowly, and the look on his face stopped my heart. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. His expression was blank in that terrible way faces get when all the emotion has been burned out. He looked at me like I was a problem he didn't have the energy to solve. "Mom," his voice was flat. "You're here?" "Of course I'm here." I moved toward him, my shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. Each step felt wrong, like I was walking through someone else's nightmare. "What happened? Where is everyone? Where's... The wedding's over, Mom." I stopped walking. "Over? What do you mean, over, Ethan? I don't understand. I thought..." "She left." He turned back to the window, speaking to the glass instead of to me. "It's done." The gift bag slipped from my hand. I didn't hear it hit the floor. "She left," I repeated stupidly, trying to make the words make sense. "When? Why?" He didn't answer. I crossed the remaining distance between us and reached out to touch his shoulder. But he flinched away. The rejection was physical. A slap without the contact. "Ethan, please, talk to me. What happened?" "What happened?" He laughed. A short, bitter sound that had nothing to do with humor. "What happened is that I apparently don't know how to keep the people I love from leaving me." The emphasis on those last words felt pointed, aimed. "Baby, I'm so sorry, but I'm here now. I'm here and we can..." "Can what?" He finally looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. "Fix it. Make it better. You're 30 years too late for that, Mom." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Ethan, that's not fair, isn't it?" We stood there in that ruined party space, surrounded by the debris of his failed wedding, and I didn't recognize my son. This man with the hard eyes and harder voice. Where was the boy who used to hold my hand in parking lots, who used to tell me about his day and run-on sentences that made no sense but filled my heart anyway? "I need to be alone," he said finally, turning away again. "There's a motel about 3 blocks from here, the Starlight Inn. You can stay there." "I already have a room, but Ethan, I came all this way." "I know," he cut me off, still not looking at me. "I know you did, and I'm sorry you wasted the trip. Wasted the trip. 12 hours on a bus. Every dollar I'd saved, every hope I'd allowed myself to have. Wasted." "I'll call you," he said. But it sounded like a dismissal rather than a promise. "Just give me some time." I wanted to argue. I wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him and demand he talk to me. I wanted to tell him that mothers don't just leave their sons standing alone in rooms full of ghosts. But I'd learned a long time ago that you can't force someone to let you in. So I bent down, picked up the gift bag with my shaking hands, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, I looked back. He hadn't moved, just stood there at the window, a statue in a tuxedo, surrounded by all the trappings of a celebration that would never happen. "I love you," I said to his back. He didn't respond. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Outside, the California sun was too bright, too cheerful. The street was busy with people going about their normal days, laughing, talking, living their lives, and I stood on the sidewalk with my purse and my gift bag, trying to remember how to breathe. My phone showed 2:03 p.m. The wedding should have been starting. Instead, everything was over. The motel room smelled like industrial cleaner and old cigarette smoke. I sat on the edge of the bed, scratchy comforter, springs that groaned with every movement, and stared at my phone. Should I call him? Text him? Give him space? How much space does a broken heart need? The first night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, the distant sound of traffic, and tried to piece together what had happened. She left, but why? And when? Had she left him at the altar? Called it off days before? Was there another man? The questions circled like vultures. At dawn, I texted him, "I'm here if you want to talk." No response. At noon, "Please let me know you're okay." No response. At 5 p.m., "I love you, baby." No matter what. 3 gray dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "I'm fine. I'll call you soon." But he didn't call. The second day, I walked the neighborhood. The motel was in a part of the city that felt transitional. Not quite gentrified, not quite derelict. Coffee shops next to check-cashing places, organic grocery stores across from pawn shops. I found a small diner and ordered breakfast. I couldn't eat. The eggs congealed on my plate while I pushed them around with my fork, pretending, "You okay, honey?" The waitress was probably 60, with silver hair pulled back in a messy bun and kind eyes magnified by thick glasses. "Just tired," I lied. "You're not from around here." Was it that obvious? New Mexico. Long way from home. She refilled my coffee without asking. "What brings you to the city?" I opened my mouth to say my son's wedding, but couldn't form the words. Instead, visiting family. She nodded like she understood more than I'd said and left me alone. That's when I overheard them. 2 women at the table behind me, voices low but not low enough. "Did you hear about the Hastings wedding?" My spine straightened. "The one at the converted warehouse. Wasn't that yesterday? Supposed to be. Cancelled last minute. Like last minute. What happened?" "Apparently," the woman lowered her voice, and I had to strain to hear. "The bride found something on his phone. Messages from another woman." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "No. I heard it from Lisa, who was working the bar. Said the bride showed up 3 hours before the ceremony, saw something on his phone while he was in the shower, and just left. Didn't even pack her things. Just left. That's insane. I know the groom was calling everyone trying to cancel, but half the guests had already arrived. Apparently it was a complete nightmare." Another woman. "Ethan had been messaging another woman." No, that couldn't be right. My son wasn't. He wouldn't. But then I remembered his cold eyes yesterday. The way he'd said, "I don't know how to keep the people I love from leaving me." Like he was the victim. I left money on the table and walked out before the bile rising in my throat could betray me. The next 2 days blurred together. I texted Ethan every morning, got one-word responses that told me nothing. "Fine, busy." Later I walked the city streets until my feet ached, sat in coffee shops pretending to read books I picked up at used bookstores, watched strangers live their normal lives, and wondered how anyone did anything when the world felt like it was ending. On the 4th day, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You forgot to pay for our honeymoon." I stared at it, confused. Then I realized it was Ethan. He must have gotten a new phone, but the message made no sense. "Ethan, didn't I warn you?" I typed it without thinking, some instinct guiding my fingers. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my motel room door. I opened it to find my son standing in the hallway, still wearing that same tuxedo shirt. Now wrinkled, untucked, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Maybe he hadn't. "Warn me about what, Mom?" His voice was sharp, accusatory. "Come in," I said quietly. "Please." He didn't move. "Warn me about what?" People were starting to look out their doors, drawn by the tension in his voice. "Ethan, please, come inside." Finally, reluctantly, he stepped into the room. I closed the door behind him and we stood there in the small space, so close physically, so impossibly far in every other way. "What did you mean?" he demanded. "What were you supposed to warn me about?" I sat down on the bed because my legs were shaking. "About building your life on lies. About thinking you can take shortcuts. About what, Mom?" Spell it out for me." "I heard what happened," I said quietly. "About the messages, about why she left." His face went pale, then red. "You don't know anything. Then tell me." "There's nothing to tell. She overreacted. They were just messages from an ex-girlfriend. Nothing happened. But Emma decided to—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "She decided I was cheating, which I wasn't. But you were hiding something. Everyone hides things, Mom." He looked at me with something like hatred. "You should know that better than anyone." The words landed like stones. "What's that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means." And suddenly I did. "You lied to me." Ethan's voice cracked on the last word, and for a second, I saw the 12-year-old boy who'd asked where his father went. The boy I'd lied to then, too. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. "About everything." He started pacing the small room, 3 steps one way, 3 steps back, caged. About why we moved. About the house. About Aunt Susan's money. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Ethan, you got an inheritance," he interrupted, not looking at me. $10,000, maybe more. "And you told me we lost the house because we couldn't afford it, because Dad left us with nothing. But that wasn't true, was it? It's not that simple." "Then make it simple," he whirled on me. And I saw tears in his eyes, angry tears. "Because from where I'm standing, you chose to move us to the middle of nowhere when you had money. You chose to make us poor. I chose to save you." The words exploded out of me. "Your father left us with $60,000 in debt, Ethan. $60,000. From loan sharks, from casinos, from banks that would have taken everything. Our house was collateral on loans I didn't even know existed." He stopped pacing. "Aunt Susan's money didn't even cover half of it," I continued, my voice shaking. "I had to sell the house to pay the rest. We moved because we had no choice, because staying meant watching them take everything. Because I couldn't—" My voice broke. "I couldn't let them take your childhood too." The silence that followed felt like drowning. "You never told me," he said finally, quieter now but no less hurt. "All those years you never told me. You were 12. How do you tell a 12-year-old that his father destroyed everything?" "I'm not 12 anymore, Mom." He sank into the single chair by the window, head in his hands. "I haven't been 12 for a long time. But you kept treating me like I couldn't handle the truth. I was protecting you." "From what? Reality?" He looked up, and his face was wet now. "You know what I thought? I thought you were ashamed of him, of me. I thought we moved because you wanted to forget we ever existed." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Ethan, no! I spent years thinking I wasn't good enough, that our life wasn't good enough, that I had to become someone different, someone better, someone who deserved." He stopped, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "And the whole time, you were carrying this secret, this lie. It wasn't a lie, it was a lie of omission, Mom. Same thing. We sat there in the harsh, fluorescent light of that cheap motel room, and I felt the years of distance between us crystallize into something solid and visible. You want to talk about lies?" His voice hardened again. "Let's talk about lies." Something in his tone made my stomach drop. "Emma didn't just leave because of messages on my phone." He laughed bitterly. "She left because she found out about the money." "What money?" "I had debts, credit cards, student loans I told her were paid off, a business investment that went south. I was handling it, but—" He ran his hands through his hair. "She had some money set aside for the honeymoon, a wedding gift from her parents, $5,000. I already knew where this was going. I borrowed it, told her I'd put it in our joint account for safekeeping, used it to make payments on my debts instead." He looked at me, defiant and ashamed in equal measure. "And when she found out, when she demanded to know why I lied, I told her I learned from the best." The air left the room. "I told her you'd done the same thing to me, that you'd taught me that lying was easier than telling the truth when the truth was ugly." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "So she didn't just leave because of the messages?" "Mom, she left because I'm a liar, because I'm exactly like Dad." His voice cracked. "And I blamed you for it." The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent his whole childhood trying to save him from becoming his father, and in the process, I'd taught him that secrets were the same as protection, that love meant hiding the hard truths. "You're not like your father." I said quietly. How would you know? You never talk about him. I know because you're still here. You're still fighting. Your father ran. I ran too, he said. To San Francisco. As far from you as I could get. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. And now Emma's gone. The wedding's ruined. I've got nothing. He looked at me with something that might have been desperation. Did you really think lying to me would keep me safe? I thought. I stopped, trying to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. I thought if you didn't know about the debts, about your father's failures, you wouldn't carry that weight, you wouldn't think you were destined to repeat his mistakes. But I did anyway. He stood up, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the glass. I repeated all of them, the lies, the debts, the running away. Then break the cycle. He turned to look at me, confused. Break the cycle, I repeated. Stop running, stop lying, stop pretending that hiding things is the same as fixing them. Is that what you're doing now? His question was sharp. Or is this just another form of protection? I met his eyes. I'm done protecting you from the truth, Ethan. Here it is. I failed you, not by lying about the debts. I do that again to keep you from that burden. But I failed you by never teaching you that trust is built on truth, not on protection. I thought love meant shielding you from pain. I was wrong. His shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered. Neither do I. We stood there in the terrible honesty of that admission. Ethan left without saying goodbye. I watched him walk down the motel hallway, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he was walking into a storm. The door to the stairwell closed behind him with a hollow thud. I stood in the doorway of my room until a housekeeper appeared with her cart, giving me a look that said I was in the way of her work. Back inside, I sat on the bed and tried to think. The conversation had solved nothing. If anything, we'd just added more rubble to the ruins between us. Two people who loved each other and didn't know how to do it right. But there was someone else in this story, someone who'd been hurt by all of it. Emma, the bride who'd walked away. I needed to understand what had really happened, not Ethan's version, colored by guilt and defensiveness, not the gossip I'd overheard in diners. I needed to hear it from her. Finding her wasn't difficult. Small mercy of the digital age. A quick search of Emma Carter San Francisco plus wedding brought up her Instagram profile. It was public, photos of her life, coffee shops, bookstores, beach sunsets, and 3 days ago, a photo of the ocean with a caption, "Sometimes the waves teach you when to hold on and when to let go." Her location was tagged Moonstone Cafe, Ocean Beach. I took 2 buses to get there. The cafe sat right on the edge of the beach, a small building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a patio where customers sat bundled in jackets against the wind, inside. It smelled like espresso and salt air. She was sitting alone at a corner table, staring out at the gray-green water. I recognized her from the photos. Mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair, delicate features that right now looked carved from exhaustion. I almost turned around and left. Who was I to intrude on her grief? I was part of the problem, wasn't I? The mother who'd raised a man who'd lied to her. But she looked up then, as if she'd felt someone watching, and our eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face. She'd seen my photo somewhere, probably on Ethan's phone, back when they were happy. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. It felt like an invitation to step off a cliff, but I walked over anyway. "Mrs. Reyes," she said as I sat down. Not a question, a statement. "Emma, I'm sorry to intrude. Are you?" She wasn't hostile, just tired. "Or did Ethan send you?" "No, he doesn't know I'm here." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded to my empty hands. "You want coffee?" "I don't want to. I'm buying." It wasn't generosity. It was a test. Would I accept even this small thing from her? "Thank you, black coffee." "Please." She ordered for both of us at the counter and came back with 2 mugs and a plate of lemon cake. She hadn't asked if I wanted. We sat in silence until the awkwardness became almost comfortable. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "for what happened, for—" "Don't apologize for him," she cut me off gently. "You didn't lie to me, he did." "I know, but I feel like I failed him somehow, failed to teach him." "Mrs. Reyes," she wrapped her hands around her mug, "I didn't leave because of you. He said—" "I know what he said. He blamed you, told me you'd taught him that lying was survival, that you'd done the same thing with money that should have been his. She looked at me directly. Did you? I told her the truth, all of it. Robert's debts, the inheritance, the choice I'd made. When I finished, she was quiet for a while. That's what I thought, she said finally. You were protecting your child. What Ethan did was steal from his partner. She took a sip of her coffee. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, she said it with certainty. Ethan is a good man, Mrs. Reyes, but he's lost. He spent so long running from his past that he never learned to build a future. He loves you. I know. She smiled sadly. But love without trust is just a pretty word. The ocean roared in the distance, waves crashing against the shore in endless rhythm. The messages from his ex, I ventured carefully. Were they? Nothing physical, she confirmed. Just conversations. Remember when, and I miss talking to you. Kind of stuff, harmless maybe, but he hid them. And when someone hides harmless things, you start wondering what else they're hiding. And then you found out about the money, and then I found out about the money. She broke off a piece of lemon cake but didn't eat it. $5,000, Mrs. Reyes. The honeymoon was supposed to be Hawaii, 2 weeks, our first big trip together. And he used it to pay off debts he told me didn't exist. I'm sorry. Me too. She looked out at the water again. You want to know what broke me? It wasn't the money or even the lies. It was what he said when I confronted him. I waited. He told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand how hard things had been for him, that his mother had ruined his life and he was just trying to survive. She finally met my eyes. He made himself the victim of everything, Mrs. Reyes, including you. The words settled heavy in my chest. But here's the thing. She leaned forward slightly. When he was talking about you, when he was blaming you, I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't hate. It was fear. Fear. He's terrified of losing you. Too, just like he lost his father, just like he lost me. She paused. Maybe that's why he pushes you away. Because if he's the one who leaves first, it hurts less. I felt tears prick my eyes and blinked them back. You're very wise, I said softly. She laughed, a real laugh this time. I'm a trauma therapist. It's literally my job to understand why people hurt each other. That explained the calmness, the lack of venom. Do you think, I hesitated, do you think he can change? She was quiet for a long time. I think he has to want to, she said finally. And I think he needs to forgive himself for not being perfect, for not saving his family when he was a child, for repeating his father's patterns. She looked at me. For not being the son you deserved. He is the son I deserved, exactly as he is. Then tell him that, she said gently, because I don't think he believes it. We finished our coffee as the afternoon light shifted across the water, turning everything gold and silver. Thank you, I said as we stood to leave, for talking to me. You didn't have to. I know, she smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. But you came all this way for a wedding that didn't happen. Seemed like someone should give you something worth the trip. We walked out together. At the bus stop, she hugged me, quick but genuine. He'll be okay, Mrs. Reyes. Eventually, just don't give up on him. I won't. She walked away down the beach, a small figure against the vast ocean. And I thought about forgiveness, about how the people we hurt the most are usually the ones who see us most clearly. I went back to the motel and packed my bag. There was nothing left to do here. Ethan needed space, not the forced, resentful space of avoidance, but real distance where healing could happen without witnesses, without the weight of my presence, reminding him of everything that had broken between us. I sat on the edge of that uncomfortable bed one last time and pulled out the motel stationery from the drawer. The pen, one of those cheap ballpoint ones that barely works, struggled against the paper, but I pressed harder. My son, I kept secrets to protect you. You kept secrets to punish me. Now we're even. When your heart is ready to listen, I'll be home. I love you. Mom. I read it 3 times, wondering if I should say more, explain more, apologize more. But some things need to be simple, clean, like cutting a thread instead of trying to untangle it at dawn before the courage could leave me. I walked to his apartment building. The address had been on the wedding invitation. An irony that didn't escape me. I climbed 3 flights of stairs in a building that smelled like old carpet and other people's cooking. His door was 3C, with a crooked brass number and a doormat that said, "Welcome." I slid the note underneath, heard it scrape against the hardwood floor inside, and left before I could change my mind. The walk back to the bus station took 40 minutes. The city was just waking up. Joggers on the sidewalks, coffee shops rolling up their metal shutters, delivery trucks double parked with their hazards blinking. I watched it all like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. This wasn't my world. It never would be. The bus station was already crowded. I bought my ticket home, 12 hours back to New Mexico, and sat in a plastic chair that was bolted to the floor, waiting for my zone to be called. A man nearby was FaceTiming with a small child who kept pressing her face too close to the camera, making herself a blur of pink cheeks and blonde hair. He laughed every time she did it, patient and delighted in equal measure. I thought about Ethan at that age, how he'd grab my phone and take dozens of photos of his own face from weird angles, then show them to me like they were masterpieces, how I'd pretend to be amazed every single time. When did we stop being delighted by each other? The ride back felt longer than the ride there, maybe because I was going toward nothing instead of something. No wedding, no reconciliation, just the same life I'd lived. Now with fresh wounds added to the old scars. The woman next to me this time was younger, maybe 30, with a baby strapped to her chest in one of those complicated carrier contraptions that looked like they required an engineering degree to figure out. The baby slept the whole way, tiny fists curled against her mother's heart, completely trusting that the person holding them would keep them safe. How old? I asked after an hour of silence. 3 months. We're going to see his grandmother. She adjusted the carrier slightly, her hand protective over his small head. She hasn't met him yet. She'll be thrilled. The woman's smile was complicated. I hope so. We haven't talked in a while. Had a fight about how I wanted to raise him. She thought I was being too protective, said I needed to let him breathe. I almost laughed at the irony. Almost told her my own story. Instead, I just said, mothers and daughters, it's complicated. Mothers and sons, too, I bet. Especially those. She fell asleep, eventually, head tilted back against the seat, baby rising and falling with her breath in perfect synchronization. I watched them and thought about all the ways we try to love each other and get it wrong. All the ways good intentions pave roads to places we never meant to go. The landscape shifted outside the window. California giving way to Arizona. Arizona bleeding into New Mexico. Green hills flattened into scrubland. Scrubland gave way to desert. The colors changed too, from the soft pastels of the coast to the hard golds and browns of home. When we crossed the state line, something in my chest loosened. The desert doesn't lie to you. It doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. Harsh, unforgiving, beautiful in its honesty. You know exactly what you're getting. There are no hidden agendas in the sand. When we pulled into the New Mexico station, the heat hit me like coming home. Dry, relentless, honest heat, no fog here, no mysteries, no secrets hiding in the California mist, just sun and sand and truth that burned but never deceived. Dolores was waiting for me in her ancient truck that sounded like it was held together with prayers and duct tape. She didn't ask questions when she saw my face, just pulled me into a quick hug that smelled like menthol cigarettes and drugstore perfume, then threw my bag in the truck bed. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. How was it? She finally asked, eyes on the road. Complicated. She nodded like that was answer enough. You hungry? Not really. We're stopping anyway. She pulled into a diner I'd never been to. One of those places that appears out of nowhere in the desert, like a mirage made real. We ordered coffee and pie. We didn't eat, and she waited. The wedding didn't happen, I said finally. Oh, honey. His fiancée left him. Found out he'd been lying about money, about other things. I stirred sugar into my coffee, just to have something to do with my hands. Turns out he learned it from me. The lying, I mean. That's bullshit and you know it. I looked up, surprised by the vehemence in her voice. You didn't teach that boy to lie, Margaret. You taught him to survive. There's a difference. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. What did you lie about? I told her everything. Robert's debts, the inheritance, the choice I'd made to protect Ethan from knowing the truth. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You did what you thought was right, she said finally. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But you can't spend the rest of your life apologizing for trying to save your kid. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He's hurt and scared and probably ashamed of himself. She pushed her untouched pie toward me. But he doesn't hate you. I wanted to believe her. The restaurant looked exactly the same, like I'd never left, like time had paused while I was gone and restarted the moment I walked back through the door. My manager gave me a sympathetic look when I came in for my first shift. How was the wedding? Beautiful, I lied. Because some truths are too heavy to carry into work, he nodded, accepting the fiction, and handed me my apron. The regulars asked too, carefully, like they were afraid of the answer. Tommy wanted to know if I'd taken pictures. Mr. Hernandez asked if the bride was pretty. Dolores, bless her, told them all to mind their own damn business. I fell back into the rhythm of work like muscle memory. Coffee pots that needed filling. Orders that needed taking. The griddle that always ran too hot on the left side. The booth in the corner where the vinyl was torn, and we kept meaning to fix it but never did. My little house behind the restaurant was dusty but waiting. I unpacked slowly, putting away the navy dress I'd never worn. It went back in the closet, still on its hanger, a ghost of something that never happened. The shoes, those 2 nice black flats, I left by the door. Maybe I'd wear them to church, maybe I'd donate them, maybe they'd just sit there as a reminder that sometimes getting dressed up doesn't change anything. The silver picture frame, Ethan as a baby, gap-toothed and grinning, I set on my nightstand, where I could see it every morning when I woke up and every night before I slept. Then I went back to living. The days blurred together in that way they do when you're just surviving instead of living. Morning shift, afternoon shift, the occasional evening when we stayed open late for truckers passing through. Coffee, eggs, burgers, pie, the same conversations with the same people about the weather, about politics, about nothing at all. But something was different now. I found myself looking out at the desert more often, standing at the window during slow moments, watching the heat shimmer off the asphalt, thinking about Ethan, about Emma, about Robert even, for the first time in years, about all the ways love can save you and destroy you in the same breath. My phone stayed mostly silent. A few texts from Ethan arrived sporadically, like signals from a distant planet. Are you okay? I'm sorry. I need time to figure things out. I'm not blaming you, I'm just trying to understand. I responded the same way each time. I'm here when you're ready. Short, simple, true. I didn't push, didn't demand explanations or timelines or promises. Just left the door open and trusted that eventually, maybe, he'd walk through it. 3 months passed. The seasons changed. Though in the desert, that mostly meant the angle of the sun shifted slightly, and the wind grew teeth. Summer's brutal heat gave way to autumn's slightly less brutal heat. The tourists who'd gotten lost on their way to somewhere more interesting stopped coming. It was just us locals again, hunkered down, waiting for winter. I worked, I cooked, I cleaned, I existed, and then one Tuesday in October, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email, a letter in an envelope with an Austin, Texas postmark in Ethan's handwriting. That same half-cursive, half-print scrawl he'd had since middle school, the one that looked like he couldn't decide if he wanted to be a child or an adult. I stood in my kitchen holding that envelope for a full 5 minutes before I could make myself open it. My hands shook as I unfolded the pages inside. Mom, I've been thinking about everything. You were right. Sometimes we hurt the ones we love trying to protect ourselves. Emma's gone. I ruined it. Not because of you, but because I didn't know how to be honest about the debts, about Dad, about how scared I was of turning into him. I'm starting over. New job in Austin with a non-profit working on affordable housing. It's not glamorous. It doesn't pay what I made in San Francisco. But I wake up every morning and don't feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Small apartment, 2 bedrooms. The second one just sits empty right now. I thought maybe, if you ever wanted to visit, I'd like that. I'd like it a lot. You don't owe me anything. I know that now. You gave me everything, and I spent years resenting you for it, for the sacrifices I didn't understand, for the protection I mistook for control. I just hope you can forgive me. I love you, Mom. I should have said it more. I should have showed it more, but I'm saying it now. Ethan I'm going to therapy twice a week. It's weird and uncomfortable, and I hate it, but I think that's how I know it's working. My therapist says I need to learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Turns out, I've been running my whole life. Inside the envelope, tucked behind the letter, was a smaller piece of paper. Hotel stationery from the motel where I'd stayed in San Francisco. My note to him. The one I'd slipped under his door on the back. In fresh ink, he'd written, "We're even. Now let's be better." I sat at my kitchen table with that letter and cried until I couldn't anymore. Not sad tears this time. Something else. Something like relief mixed with hope. Mixed with the ache of all the time we'd lost and all the time we might still have. But also something like, it's not too late. The letter sat on my kitchen table for 2 days while I worked up the courage to respond. What do you say to your son when he's finally ready to rebuild? How do you accept an olive branch without crushing it in your desperate grip? Finally, I texted him, "I'd love to visit." His response came within minutes, when soon, "I need to arrange time off work." "Okay, let me know. I'll pick you up from the bus station. You don't have to." "I want to." Those 3 words sat on my screen like a promise. The next morning, I walked into my manager's office. He looked up from his paperwork, surprised. I never interrupted him during his morning coffee ritual. "I need time off," I said. "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe more." He set down his coffee, studying me. In 30 years, I'd taken maybe 5 sick days total. "Your son? He's in Austin. He asked me to visit." His face softened into something that might have been a smile on a less weathered face. "Margaret, take a month if you need it. Hell, take 2. You've earned it. 2 weeks should be enough. The offer stands anyway." He picked up his coffee again. "When do you leave?" "As soon as I can get a ticket." I bought a bus ticket that afternoon. Departure, Friday morning. That gave me 3 days to prepare, to work my last few shifts, to try not to think about all the ways this could go wrong, but mostly to hope it would go right. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the desert wind rattle my windows, and thought about second chances, about how rare they are, how precious, how terrifying. What if we couldn't bridge the gap? What if the damage was too deep? What if we sat across from each other in his Austin apartment and realized we'd become strangers who happened to share DNA? But then I thought about his letter, about the care he'd taken with his words, about how he'd kept my note, carried it with him, written on it like it was something worth saving, that had to mean something. At dawn, I got up and made coffee, watched the sun rise over the desert, painting everything gold and pink and purple. This landscape had been my whole life for so long, my prison and my sanctuary in equal measure, but maybe it was time to see what else was out there. Dolores drove me to the station Friday morning. She didn't say much, just pulled me into a hug before I got on the bus and whispered, "Bring him home someday. I want to meet this boy who's got you all twisted up." "Maybe," I said. Someday. The bus pulled out of the station at 8 a.m., and I watched New Mexico disappear behind me, not knowing when or if I'd see it again. But this time I wasn't running toward a dream that would shatter. I was running toward something real. He was waiting for me at the bus station. I saw him through the window as we pulled in, standing near the entrance with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched against the Texas heat, watching the buses arrive with an expression I couldn't read from this distance. My heart was hammering so hard. I thought everyone on the bus must be able to hear it. The woman next to me, different from the one on my last journey, gave me a curious look as I gathered my bag with shaking hands. "You okay?" she asked. "Just nervous. First time in Austin. First time seeing my son in a while." She smiled. "I'm sure he's excited." I wasn't sure of anything, except that my legs felt like water as I stepped off the bus into the thick Texas air that felt so different from New Mexico heat. Thicker somehow, more alive, like the air itself was sweating. For a moment we just stood there looking at each other across the crowded terminal. People flowed around us, reunions and departures happening on all sides, but it felt like we were frozen in our own private moment. He looked different, thinner maybe, or maybe just older. The polish of California had worn off completely, leaving something more raw underneath. He was wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, nothing fancy, and his hair was slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to get it cut. He looked real in a way he hadn't in years. Then he closed the distance between us and pulled me into a hug, not the brief, obligatory hugs we'd exchanged over the years. The kind where your bodies barely touch and you're already pulling away, even as you're leaning in. A real hug, the kind where you hold on because letting go feels impossible. The kind that says, I'm sorry and I missed you and I was wrong without needing words. I felt his shoulders shake and realized he was crying. I'm sorry, he whispered against my shoulder, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything, for the wedding, for what I said, for the last 10 years of... Shh. I held him tighter, my own tears soaking into his t-shirt. I know, baby. I know, me too. We stood there in that bus station. 2 grown adults crying like idiots while people streamed past us with their luggage and their own lives and their own complicated love stories. A security guard glanced our way, decided we weren't a threat, kept walking. A little girl pointed at us and asked her mother why we were sad. The mother gently steered her away, giving us privacy for our public breakdown. Finally, after what might have been 2 minutes or 20, Ethan pulled back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, laughing a little at himself. Sorry, I didn't mean to ambush you with emotions right off the bus. That was perfect, I said, cupping his face with both hands, like I used to when he was small. That was exactly perfect. He smiled, that real smile I hadn't seen in years, the one that crinkled his eyes and showed his slightly crooked bottom teeth, and picked up my back. Come on, let me show you where I live. Fair warning, it's nothing like San Francisco. Good. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of an older building in a neighborhood that was clearly still figuring out what it wanted to be. Mix of students, young families, artists, and old-timers who'd been there before the neighborhood got trendy. You could hear a baby crying somewhere above us, music drifting from the apartment below, someone practicing guitar. Not badly. It's not much, he said, fumbling with his keys, suddenly nervous. But it's honest. That's what I kept telling myself when I signed the lease. At least it's honest. The space was small but clean, sparse but intentional. A couch that clearly came from Goodwill or someone's curb, brown corduroy, slightly worn but comfortable looking. A coffee table made from what appeared to be an old door laid across cinder blocks. The kind of thing college kids make when they can't afford real furniture. Bookshelves constructed from planks and bricks, filled with actual books instead of decorative objects in the kitchen, barely big enough for 2 people. Mismatched dishes, a pot and a pan that had seen better days, a coffee maker that looked older than my first car, but everything was clean, cared for. It reminded me so much of our first apartment after we moved from California, after Robert left, that I had to blink back tears. I love it, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Really? He looked at me like he couldn't quite believe it. You're not just saying that. Really? It feels like you, the real you. His face softened with relief. That's what I was hoping for. He showed me the 2nd bedroom, even smaller than the first, barely big enough for the twin bed, dresser and reading lamp he'd put in there. But the bed was made with care, fresh sheets that still had creases from the package, a quilt that looked handmade. I bought that at a thrift store, he said, pointing to the quilt. The woman there said her grandmother made it, I thought. He stopped, embarrassed. I thought you'd like it. I ran my hand over the stitching. Tiny, precise, made with the kind of patience that only comes from love. It's beautiful. I wasn't sure if you'd come, he admitted, leaning against the doorframe. But I wanted it ready, just in case. I've had this room set up for 2 months, just waiting. The image of him preparing this space, buying sheets and a quilt from strangers, hoping I'd come. It broke something open in my chest. I'll always come when you call me, I said quietly, meeting his eyes. That's what mothers do. We wait. And we come when we're called, even when it takes a while. That first night, we ordered pizza from a place he swore had the best crust in Austin. We ate it sitting on his couch, paper plates on our laps. And he told me about his job with the nonprofit. It's called Home for All, he explained, gesturing with a slice of pepperoni. We advocate for affordable housing policies, help low-income families navigate the system, connect people with resources. It's not glamorous. The pay is shit compared to what I made in San Francisco. But Mom, he looked at me with something like wonder. I actually care about what I'm doing. That's not nothing. It's everything. He pulled off a piece of pepperoni, ate it separately like he used to as a kid. My boss, Sandra, she's this 60-year-old woman who's been doing this work for 30 years. She doesn't take shit from anyone. Politicians, landlords, anyone. She reminds me of you, actually. Is that a compliment? The highest, he smiled. She told me the first day, Ethan, this job will break your heart weakly, but it'll also remind you why humans are worth fighting for. And she was right. Last week, we helped this single mom find housing after she'd been living in her car with 2 kids, watching her cry when she got the keys to her apartment. His voice cracked. I've never felt anything like that in my life. I'm proud of you, I said softly. He looked down at his plate. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. We finished the pizza in comfortable silence, and then he asked if I wanted to watch a movie. We scrolled through his streaming service. He actually asked my opinion on what to watch, something that felt revolutionary, and settled on an old comedy we'd both seen before, the kind where you don't have to pay attention, where you can just exist together. Halfway through, during a part where we'd both seen coming and had stopped laughing at years ago, he said, Emma would have liked this. The work I'm doing now, I mean. I paused the movie. Have you talked to her? Once, about a month ago. She called to check on me, make sure I was okay. He picked at a thread on the couch cushion. She's seeing someone new. Met him at a yoga class or something. She sounded happy. How did that feel? Honestly, like being stabbed and hugged at the same time. He looked at me. I'm devastated that it's over, that I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. But I'm also genuinely happy she found someone who can be honest with her. She deserves that. That's very mature of you. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, well, therapy's expensive. I should be getting something out of it. Tell me about therapy, I said, if you want to. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then it's weird. I sit in this office with this woman named Dr. Chen, and she asks me questions that seem simple but aren't, like, why do you think you lie? Or what are you protecting yourself from? And I want to run out of the room half the time because facing that stuff is... He shook his head. It's brutal, Mom. But you keep going. I keep going. He met my eyes. Because the alternative is becoming Dad, and I won't do that. The days I spent there settled into a rhythm that felt like healing. Ethan would leave for work around 8. I'd clean his apartment, not because it needed it, but because I needed to feel useful, needed to take care of him in the small ways I still could. I'd make simple meals with the limited ingredients in his fridge. Nothing fancy, just the kind of food I'd cooked my whole life. Eggs and toast for breakfast, left warming in the oven, sandwiches for lunch, simple dinners of chicken and vegetables when he came home. We'd talk, really talk, about everything and nothing. He told me about his co-worker Miguel, who was teaching him to cook more than just ramen and scrambled eggs. About his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who kept leaving him cookies because she'd decided he was too skinny. About the family he'd helped find housing that week, and how the dad had hugged him and said, "You gave us our lives back." I told him about the restaurant, about Dolores's latest terrible boyfriend, about how Mr. Hernandez had finally admitted he couldn't read the menu anymore and needed glasses, about the desert sunsets and why, even after all these years, they still took my breath away. We told each other our stories, not just the sanitized versions we'd been sharing for years, but the real ones, the messy, complicated, beautifully human ones. One afternoon, as I was making us coffee, I'd bought good beans, the kind he couldn't quite afford but I could. He asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Mom, that text, when I asked about the honeymoon and you said, 'Didn't I warn you?' What did you mean?" I sat down across from him at his makeshift table, wrapping my hands around my mug for courage. "I meant that you can't build a life on other people's money, or on lies, or on anything that isn't truly yours to begin with." I met his eyes. "When you build your happiness on someone else's foundation, whether it's their money, their trust, their forgiveness, it crumbles the moment they take it back. But when you build it on your own truth, on your own work, on forgiveness you've actually earned, it lasts." He absorbed this slowly, nodding. "I built everything on borrowed money and borrowed trust. My life in San Francisco, my relationship with Emma, even my relationship with you. Everything was rented, not owned. My confidence, my success, my sense of self. And now I'm trying to build something real. It's smaller." He gestured around the modest apartment. Messier. Takes longer, but it's mine. Actually mine. That's all anyone can do. On my last evening there, we sat on his small balcony, barely big enough for 2 folding chairs, and a plant he was slowly killing despite his best efforts. Watching the sun set over Austin, the sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors bleeding into each other like watercolors. I'm proud of you, I said again, because it felt important to say it multiple times, to make up for all the times I hadn't said it when he was younger. I know I failed you in a lot of ways, but what you're building here, who you're becoming, I'm so proud. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stared out at the city lights beginning to flicker on, fireflies made of electricity and human ambition. I used to think being a man meant never needing anyone, he said finally, his voice soft. Dad left because he couldn't handle needing us, couldn't handle being needed. So I thought needing people was weakness, that dependency was failure. And now I think maybe being a man means admitting when you need help, means staying even when it's hard, even when running would be easier, means building something small and real instead of something big and fake. I reached over and took his hand. He squeezed back, and we sat there in the gathering dark, holding on. I'm sorry I didn't come home for Christmas, he said after a while. Or Thanksgiving, or your birthday. I'm sorry I let years go by without really seeing you. You're here now. You called me. You made space for me. I squeezed his hand tighter. That's what matters. I want to come home, he said, to New Mexico. Not to live. This is home now. But to visit, to see the restaurant, to remember what home looks like, to stop running from where I came from. You're always welcome, always. The morning I left, he drove me to the bus station in his beat-up Honda that rattled when it went over 45 miles per hour. Will you come back? He asked as we pulled into the parking lot, his voice uncertain, vulnerable. I mean, I know you said you would, but I'll come back. I put my hand over his on the gear shift, and you'll come visit me. We'll figure this out, whatever this is. A relationship, he suggested. An actual mother-son relationship instead of the hollowed-out thing we've been doing. Yeah, that. We got out of the car and stood there in the parking lot, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. Thank you, he said finally, for coming, for not giving up on me, for... He stopped, overcome. For everything. That's what mothers do, I said, pulling him into one more hug. We don't give up, even when it takes a while to find our way back to each other. As the bus pulled away, I watched him standing there in the parking lot, waving, growing smaller in the distance, but somehow more solid than I'd ever seen him. More real, more himself. My phone buzzed with a text. Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. I love you. I'll call you tomorrow. I typed back. I love you too, baby. Talk tomorrow. Then I settled into my seat and watched Texas give way to New Mexico. My heart lighter than it had been in years. The story I'd been telling myself, about the ruined wedding, about the failed son, about the mistakes that couldn't be undone. That story was finished. Now we were writing a new one, together, about forgiveness and second chances, and how sometimes you have to tear everything down to build something that lasts. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what came next.